Welcome to What's in Store. We're here today at Nexus in Expo City, Dubai, the newest venue addition to the ASM Global portfolio of venues in Dubai, and we are joined with Mark Yankar. Mark joined the Coca-Cola Arena team in 2018 as commercial director, eventually taking on live programming, and now holds the role of general manager as well as senior VP of entertainment and content development in MENA. Coca-Cola Arena, operated by ASM Global, is renowned for being Dubai's home of live entertainment, and since 2024 has become the home court for Dubai basketball. With over 400 venues worldwide, ASM Global is the world's leading venue management company and producer of live event experiences. Working in live entertainment must be exciting. Can you tell us about your journey in the industry and what your role as the general manager of Coca-Cola Arena entails?
Well, morning. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
My story is very simple. I'm a failed tennis pro, and so the ambition of working in sports and entertainment has been there since I didn't make it on the court, so to speak. And so I've been in Dubai now going on 18 years. I had the opportunity to come through, and the reason why I chose Dubai is I was flying through and they had just opened Ski Dubai at Mall of Emirates, and it was July. I thought, wow, this city is where I want to be. And sort of 18 months later, I moved across. My journey with Coca-Cola Arena and ASM Global, it started in 2018. As the introduction says, I sort of joined as the commercial director. And my remit was very much to ensure our commercial program and our marketing visibility, put the name on the building. And then COVID hit, and borders were shut. Our CEO at the time decided to move back to New Zealand, and I was given that opportunity to take that step up. And in early June will be 4 years of general manager of Coca-Cola Arena, and it's been an incredible journey. Lots of sacrifices, amazing experiences, lots of tears, amazing people that have joined the business and continue to join, and the revolution of being a sort of a new multi-purpose venue in the arena and educating the city of what it means to have an arena, to now being that leader in entertainment, being socially responsible for development of talent, both in the events industry and on stage, and being able to call Dubai home for that industry is just an incredible and a proud achievement, and we look forward to see what the future holds.
That's amazing. I'm kind of curious, in your view, what sets Coca-Cola apart from other entertainment venues in the region?
First of all, we're unique.
Mhm.
Dubai is a melting pot of nationalities. I think everyone knows that. We have over 200 different types of nationalities. And with that in mind, you're appealing to 200 different types of cultures, nuances, experiences. If we look at our staffing levels, I think we've got about 33 different nationalities. And yes, although English is sort of the language of choice, but there's different interpretations, different cultures, different working styles. And so what Dubai does incredibly well is it finds peace and harmony and a way to bring its own culture through, and the heritage of Arabic culture, the cuisine, the experience, the safe nature. And so we try to instill that, whether it's an Indian show, whether it's a Arabic Khaliji show, whether it's a old school rock and roll or an EDM or a basketball game, there is always this touch of Dubai, and that's in the greeting, it's in the culture, and whether it's your first ever attendance as a child to a sporting event, or your first time experiencing Dubai, and there is that common denominator that we want to strive, is that wow factor.
Very interesting. And so, on that note, you've hosted some of the biggest concerts, biggest events in Dubai. What does it really take to pull off one of these world-class events?
Teamwork to start with. It's impossible to be able to put anything together with a mass gathering without a team, and that's everything from your housekeeping to your production to your event organization to car park marshals. So organizations, teamwork, structure. Yes, it's important to lead, and we have sort of department heads and leaders of each of these event organizations, but it's very much in the details in the organization, from the entry point right through to that customer experience, how it sounds, through to the guest at that moment when the artist comes on stage or the team takes the court, for everyone to go, wow, what a show. And so in order to be able to deliver that, it's the small details, it's that small experiences which makes it so incredibly important.
No, that's incredible. And I imagine with so many different types of events and happening in the Coca-Cola arena, you actually need quite flexible operational structures to be able to deal with the different types of shows. And so when it comes to the selection of shows, are you taking into consideration the requirements of the flexibility in operating systems in order to actually pick the right show at the right time? Or is this purely being driven by kind of consumer demand and what the people want?
I'd like to say that it was by design, but the reality is it's not. We consistently grow and the city evolves. As an example, we're now set to announce our first Greek show, a full Greek concert,
That's
10,000 plus sort of Greek fans in the building. Who would have thought that was never part of the business plan?
100%.
So to answer your question directly, it's yes, there is obviously working with the key stakeholders, the tourism boards and sports councils, with hoteliers and airlines, and understanding the demographic and times of the year that we see international residents, so international visitors come through,
Mhm.
but then also working with stakeholders in government and understanding what is the dynamic of your residents, then using technology and data to make those decisions, whether it's from the radio stations, what's favorite on the playlists, right through to sort of what is trending on the streaming platforms, and understanding what sells tickets,
Mhm.
what is nice to listen to, what is that demographic. Another key point is we're open for all ages. So when we put on a show, as long as, someone under the age of 16 is attending with an adult, it's open for everyone. So whether it's an artist like Metro Booming, or whether it's an artist like Hans Zimmer, we're open to all ages, all demographics. And that experience really shines through. And that's why it's so important. And so times of the year as well is extremely vital to understand. If you're looking at the winter months, there is so much more activities. You're ultimately competing for that same wallet.
Mhm.
So whether it's the beach, whether it's the desert, whether it's camping, whether it's restaurants, outdoor experiences. Whereas in the warmer months, there is less competition outdoors. Add to the fact the time of the week. So traditionally we were very much a market which was weekends. So it's your Thursday, Friday in the old weekend versus nowadays the Friday, Saturday. But what are the other competitive days? So less competitive days. So as an example, for basketball, we strategically chose games on Sundays, sort of early evening, to be able to attract a family. Because at that family time, there are no birthday parties, there are no sports activities, there are no other events that potentially can get in that way, to be able to drive and target towards or appeal to that audience. Consistently evolving.
Intricate details at every point.
Yeah. Intricate details. Yeah. And that's, we have a full team in around that. So a lot of insights,
Mhm.
whether it's in-person surveys, data post-show. And yes, it's important for us to know I wasn't happy with X, Y, Z, but it's also important to know, and those leading questions, what is the type of music that you're listening to? How did you hear about this event? What platform? When did you decide to buy the ticket? What was the reason why you bought a ticket? We've now introduced concepts like Tabby. So it's postpaid to allow that flexibility. We all know in this market that we're ultimately paid on a monthly cycle, which is traditionally either the last few days of the month or the first few days of the month. So when we're announcing shows, it's traditionally targeted in around paydays when possible, of course. So that natural thought process is, hey, there's a show that's been announced. It's in around payday. I can afford that ticket.
Very cool. That's super cool. And what do you think from the pieces that we discussed so far are the largest or most challenging parts of ensuring kind of consistent quality over time?
It's a very complicated question.
Yeah.
And for us, we, rather than trying to tackle everything, our ultimate goal is to improve and become subject matter experts. And for us, that is number one in terms of your guest experience. If you've got 15,000 people in that building, the reality is you're not going to please 100%. Our ambition is to try to please 100%, but we need to appeal to that masses. So what is that journey? What is the education about attending that venue? And so if you're looking at a demographic where it's more driving crowd rather than using public transport or taxis, is to arrive early, introduce dynamic pricing into the parking, recommend that guests enjoy City Walk and before a show and then come and join us in the show to avoid that traffic. We work very closely with the Roads and Transport Authority, and in Dubai, all you have to do is see what the challenges you have on some of these major roads. And yes, there are improvements set to be implemented by government stakeholders, but until that really happens and makes a vital difference, is how do you continuously educate that? Once you've arrived to that building, everything from the directional signage right through to food and beverage offering. We introduced happy hour for majority of events, again, before doors or as early as possible, to say, listen, beat the traffic, come in, enjoy a bite to eat, a coffee, a drink, whatever it may be, de-stress. So by the time you grab your seat or you stand in that sort of on that floor and waiting for the artist to come out, you've had an incredible experience. When you're during the show as well, is ease of and cleanliness of bathrooms, customer service in terms of ushers and security. We have different types of nationalities, we have different styles. And so all of these points have to be taken in consideration, and that is so important for us to focus on.
Very interesting. And so you kind of touched on something here that I find fascinating. There's a lot of data-driven decision making happening. And so I'm kind of curious about how frequently is the data wrong? And when it is wrong, kind of how do you overcome challenges like that?
It's all about collating. Anyone can collate the data, but it's all how it's being presented and what are the decisions that you're making from the data. We understand if we're talking about, for example, Indian content, there is a major shift and a major difference in consumer habits between North Indians and South Indians when it comes to food, in terms of attendance, ticket buying habits, and so forth. So again, it's very much dissecting that data, and rather than just focusing on, okay, this is an Indian or a Bollywood type of show, one size fits all, and here is the benchmark that we would need to do, we really sort of deep dive in that. What is that, if we're talking example for in the space of ticketing, what types are the first ticketing to be sold? What are the areas? What is that competitive price point?
Interesting.
Is the effects and the possibility of dynamic pricing. We have seen a major shift since the building has opened, when there was no multi-purpose venue before us, or for example, Dubai Opera, or even Etihad Arena, is that there was concerts were traditionally viewed in a greenfield site. So majority of the attendance was standing. Now you have a building where majority of the capacity is seated. And how does that work? And so, if we look at majority of the shows in the Southeast Asian, it is fully seated, yet there is a big nature of people standing up and dancing in their seat, which obviously, of course, we want to attract and encourage. But it all comes down to the gap between the seats and the style of dancing. We've all seen dancing, for example, EDM is completely different to a hip hop dance, to a Bollywood, where there's more arm movements and what you're wearing as a dress or as an outfit, the temperature associated with the building. And so forth. So looking at that data and saying, okay, if I increase, as an example, the distance between my rows on the floor by an extra 10 centimeters, I'm going to lose X amount of seats in terms of sellable inventory and potentially gross revenue. But does that improve that customer service? Does that allow guests to have a better time? Does that mean that guests will be able to, for example, increase the consumption in food and beverage? If we talk about food and beverage, it's all about the convenience. You have to take in consideration that you've got potentially 15,000 people coming to that building for a 2.5, maximum 3-hour window. And everyone wants to consume something at that given time. So it's not about necessarily opening up more concessions or putting on more staff. It's about at what time the product that is being sold, the convenience of the product. As an example, we're looking obviously to do something with you guys in terms of that Swift. So it's a grab and go mentality. So these are the pop-up areas. There's no point having it positioned in one location. If only 20% of the capacity of the building is coming through or seated in that area, you need to be able to be modular. If an attendance or if the demographic sees that they have been educated, they're attending shows earlier, then therefore the location of potentially Swift and our joint operation is positioned in that location. If it's not, and these guys are arriving 5 minutes before the main artist comes on stage, your opportunity really sits just before they hit their seats or in the intermissions. And so it's very much understanding traffic flow of consumers with their feet, their spending habits, what they are looking at in terms of a transaction size, what they are spending on, And going back to my point earlier, time of the year and time of the evening.
I see. And I'm curious, you discussed the trade-off earlier where you were discussing potentially trading off gross revenue for customer experience. And when it comes to trade-offs like that, what kind of framework do you use to make those decisions?
Well, I can tell you it's very difficult to convince your board why you're
Tell me
reducing
about
manifest
it.
or
Yeah.
working with promoters and saying, "Hey guys, let's remove a couple of rows and give guests a better experience." Um, Listen, it's data. It's all about the data, and so when we consciously make these decisions to potentially invest in that customer experience at the risk of revenue, it needs to be quantifiable.
Mhm.
So well and good for me to say, listen, we're removing rows, but it doesn't. There's no data to back that up, or there's no consequential surveys or information that is related to prove that those decisions are correct. When we introduce, for example, or when we make decisions to put food and beverage options inside the floor, so in the bowl, if we're talking about those, or we're deciding to do those pop-ups, you can't just take a gross revenue number and say, hey, we did a fantastic job. Or you can't just reduce happy hour everything by 50% and pat ourselves on the back and say, listen, we made an extra X amount of revenue. But what does that mean in terms of the flow?
Mhm.
Talking with suppliers, even the likes of talking with the roads and transport authorities and saying, hey guys, what is that data, whether it's a Careem, Uber or the RTA, and say, we have consciously educated and made a campaign and invested in terms of these happy hour or dynamic parking prices at a lower point. Have you seen that results transpire in people ordering taxis earlier?
Very cool.
Understanding what other major activities are taking place in Dubai, which can potentially affect the traffic flow as well in terms of surrounding roads.
Mhm.
So it's really working with that team, or collective teams, and living and breathing that city.
Mhm.
And ultimately, we represent the city. We're an important stakeholder. We're now deemed by Dubai Tourism as an attraction, not just an entertainment venue. So we have
That's awesome.
a responsibility as well. And what is the criteria for attraction? We all know that the likes of a TripAdvisor or other rating systems are integrable criteria and KPI for the likes of Dubai Tourism. So if we're ranking lower in an attraction, why is that? How can we improve that?
Very cool. So I'd like to switch gears here a little bit. In August 2024, it was announced that Coca-Cola Arena will be the home of Dubai's first sports franchise team, the Dubai basketball team. What's the vision behind this collaboration and what can we expect to see from it?
So this story actually goes back to 2018.
Mhm.
The first time I met the chairman of ASM Global, my first words was to him, I'm going to bring you a franchise team into this building. Now, I obviously did my homework. He was the owner of a basketball franchise team himself. We have ASM Global has a very rich history with basketball. And, I not only did I have the responsibility of obviously with the team, bringing commercial partnerships and marketing, developing the brand of Coca-Cola Arena with the team, but I'm coming from a sports background, and as I mentioned earlier, didn't make it in tennis. There's that burning desire to try to succeed and make something. And what is incredible is Dubai has everything, except it doesn't have a international sports recognized franchise team. You look at cities like Los Angeles or New York as a absolute must. If you're in the world of sport, you're going to a Yankees game, you're going to a Clippers game, you're going to a Lakers or whatever
Sure.
Rangers game in ice hockey. So that was that dream for myself. And the journey first in full transparency started with the PBA, which is the Filipino Basketball League, and we held a couple of regular season games. And simultaneously, we were obviously in discussions with some European teams, both in basketball as well as ice hockey. And I met a gentleman by the name of Dion who I actually had met sort of in a previous life, and at I think it was in late 2021 that dream sort of became a real reality, and I was very, very privileged with both the support of Dubai Holding, the owners of Coca-Cola Arena, and the board of ASM Global, is to work with this project and try to bring that franchise team to life. And we've been involved in that step since day one. And that really includes and involves meeting with stakeholders, meeting with leagues. The venue is not just the venue is not just a part where the team shows up the day before and plays. We
Sure.
take a very, very active stake. We're invested. We've spent over $2.1 million
Oh, wow.
into the building to make it basketball certified or FIBA certified. So we can host everything from NBA right through to amateur basketball. We have invested into resources. We now have a sports development department which drives this. We take an active stake in terms of the production. We support the club in terms of its game day experiences, and you know, towards the back end of the season 1, it's unbelievable to share that the team is in the playoffs.
Oh, wow.
And in season 2, we will be in a second competition. And you'll see that I mentioned the word we because, you know, Coca-Cola Arena and Dubai Basketball are joined at the hip. We have major ambition plans. You know, this season will give us 18 home games, including some playoffs. Next season, that will go to a minimum of 30.
Oh, wow.
And to be able to represent, the name in itself is Dubai. It's not called Dubai Heat, or it's not called, ex Dubai or anything else along those lines. The name represents that the club, the city is part of it, and we're incredibly proud and driven to make it a success.
That's super exciting. And so along with Dubai basketball, what plans are there at Coca-Cola Arena to create more of a sports culture in Dubai?
Working very, very closely with stakeholders such as Dubai Sports Council, Dubai Tourism, and other sporting associations. As I mentioned earlier, ice hockey. We've held ice hockey before. We will hold ice hockey again. We've held jiu-jitsu, boxing, mixed martial arts with the PFL earlier this year. We're in discussions with other sports such as netball. We're looking at, mass participation events. Could we see potentially indoor golf? Who knows? The ambition is for us to be viewed as tennis. We've held tennis and paddle as well. Our ambition is for this building not only to be the home of live entertainment, but also to be the home of sport. And, we will work with the different partners to make this happen. Broadcasting plays a very important spectrum in that. We're very proud to say we're as close to plug-and-play as you can imagine. So understanding the broadcasting requirements is a very big step, and through our sports development team is to attend international conferences, be keynote speakers, and it's very rare that a venue represents itself and says, "Listen, we are very much part of this city, and we want your business."
Very cool. I grew up here, right? So I've definitely seen kind of how sports culture has grown over time. I think if you look back 20 years ago, it was quite rare, whereas now, right, UFC and Yas Island, PFL at Coca-Cola Arena, we're starting to see that trend of sports culture really becoming ingrained as part of the city and kind of the broader country. And so on that note, I'm kind of curious, have you noticed any other unique trends in live entertainment more broadly, or specifically in sports within the region that are shaping the industry?
There is trends, and then there is this opportunity where we can create new trends as well. And so if you look at, I touched on this earlier with the live music element, and our ambition through sport is, yes, we have a phenomenal world-class facility. We have an incredible city. We've got a multinational demographic. But what is our specific Arabic heritage culture that we can bring into that world of sport, or what we can bring into that world of entertainment? And obviously the UAE is obviously being known for its incredible, generous hospitality. And that is amazing. We'll continue to develop that. But what is that next trend? What is that signature experience? Like, let's take the Dubai chocolate, which we, mind you, now serve, and give as artists gifts and players gifts and so forth. But what is that signature Dubai experience for pro athletes, right through to your guests, to international visitors, to your suppliers and broadcasters and what have you? So that's what we're trying to work, and we're actively working with different cultures and as different federations, schools, associations, and government stakeholders to be able to create that. Not manufacture it, but create that. Trends that we've obviously coming through seeing is we can talk about in mature markets, traditionally shows are announced up to 12, 18 months ahead. Dubai having growing up, you've seen some shows are announced 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
Today is a Wednesday. You probably don't know what your plans are for the weekend, but you know you're going to do something. So planning is being key. So the trend, what we have identified and we believe we've been part of, is to get people to be a little bit more organized and so start planning. So yes, we had to enter the market by announcing shows 1 or 2 months in advance. Now we're starting to see a trend, in particular with Arabic shows. Who would have thought that we're announcing 4 or 5 months ahead before a show?
Yeah.
Even to the point as well is on our website, if we know that a show is coming, we at least block the date and share by what type of genre it's going to be, so people can sort of plan and see and sort of understand. Other trends, fashion. The collaboration and the sort of association with fashion and music has always been there. And whether you're into indie rock or whether you're into a collegiate, the fashion extends not only in terms of what you're wearing, but the retail element. So the element of I've bought a ticket, I'm so excited, I get to see my favorite band or favorite performer. What outfit am I going to wear?
Interesting.
Yeah. And we as a venue, we are exploring that further. And if you see, Dubai is known to be that retail city. But when you go to a show, you've never really thought about buying merchandise. It's never been a real consideration. Whereas if you look at other markets, mature markets like London, New York, or Sydney, it is cultural that if you're going to a show, you're buying a piece of merch, whether it's a vinyl, a sticker, or hoodie, or the usual T-shirts. So we've invested very much down in terms of that merchandise, and that is something that we're obviously pushing, but working with retailers, educating again that demographic. Another trend that we're obviously seeing is, again, in different genres, is how people are consuming food and how they're consuming sort of beverages. And if we look at the Arabic space, the culture of Arabic cuisine is completely different to Western. So for our Arabic shows, we've again invested a lot of time and effort and research, and with our culinary team is the portions are more of sharing. So there is a more quantity. So yes, perhaps the price point is viewed at the concession till as higher, but there is more volume because one person, that cultural part of it is, I'm going to buy food for all of us and we're going to share it. It is not necessarily the main food as well, because the shows are traditionally later than Western. They go on longer. It's more that savory and sweet. It's a very big coffee culture. So, we have Costa Coffee and we have artisan coffee in the building as well. And so it's an experience in terms of getting that coffee, how it's served, what type of coffee there is, how it's consumed, everything from the cups and the straws and the napkins. And so very much focusing on sort of, what are the trends based on the genre of the shows that you're doing? The team spends, believe it or not, time in the creative zones like Al Quoz and Al Khazal and even in Abu Dhabi, incredible work that they're doing in LA and taking those points, as well as traveling the world and seeing, what the likes of a New York, Madison Square Garden is doing, or what is crypto.com or the O2 in London. What are these new trends coming through? How can we introduce more live cooking elements? And it's incredible to see an idea, what is more from an idea and how it's translated and consumed.
Fascinating. I think there's a lot to be excited about moving forward. But I'd love to kind of understand, we touched on this a little bit, but measuring success, right? I think there's a lot of different things happening. There's a lot of different factors to consider. So when you look at a successful show, how do you define what a successful show looked like? And kind of how do you then align the rest of the business to continue to deliver what you consider a successful show?
Great question. There is no magic answer for that.
For sure.
We try to sort of implement what we call is an event health card. And that's very much sort of broken down in terms of, number one, financials. Number two, in terms of that guest experience. Number three is in terms of economic impact, what it brought to that city. And number four is our own internal people. And so, of course, your board wants to see an increase in revenue, greater profitability, but it's about educating them and understanding what investments you need to make today to be able to grow that into the future. And that is people, that is technology, that is investments of education and marketing spends and so forth. Guest experiences, that is how many people came through the door earlier, spent more, had a great time, reduced the amount of complaints. You got positive feedback.
Mhm.
Comments about, oh, wow, I didn't know you sold merch. In that perspective, economic impact. And so there is multiple various of that. That's whether it's detailed surveys in terms of, how much additional spending power that brought into that city over that week, whether it's international residents, how occupancy levels of hotels in around that neighborhood increased, and ultimately your people. How proud they are to say that they work for ASM Global and Coca-Cola Arena. And that is evident as you consistently recruit and grow your team, is that when you post a job out, whatever that platform is you get multiple inquiries and people are excited to learn more and apply for roles within Arena. Succession planning of internal development and growth as well. But also people in the sense of, we had these ideas, we talked about planning, we saw these opportunities come through, these new initiatives that we wanted to launch, and we did it. And here is our learnings and takeaways and everything that we need to continue to do. But that debrief and saying what worked, and everyone can pat themselves on the back, but also what are the areas of opportunity? What did we implement that still needs some improvement? What is that point of difference? And then cross-referencing that, and we talked on this a little bit earlier, is how do you bring more people into that building?
Mm-hmm.
And you take a comparative show, and of course, different natures, times of the year, whether it's 40 degrees outside or 19 degrees outside, whether it's raining or a sandstorm, all these factors come into play. But you say the efforts that the marketing team, the comms team are doing to drive people earlier into that building has seen that on average within the first hour, let's say we only had 12% of the attendance through the doors, that's now increased to 15. And so these are the data, we talked about that. And then my responsibility is to share that back in the health guide and say, guys, yes, it was fantastic because we had minimal incidents and XYZ, but here is all the initiatives that we put through and here's the data to prove that.
Very interesting. And so I imagine one of the major challenges is last minute event changes. And so I'm kind of curious about, I don't know, a story or something that's happened in the past where at the very last minute, something changed and how you managed to pull your team together through to deliver an amazing experience like you guys always do.
Well, there's not one event that hasn't had a last minute change, and my colleagues can sit in this chair and probably share much greater stories.
Yeah.
But the one that springs to mind for me definitely is the Dubai Air Show in 2019. Obviously, that is an incredible event done by sort of Dubai airports. That has traditionally always been outdoors. It was forecast to rain 3 days before the event. We received a phone call to say, listen, the forecast is saying it's going to rain, and you would think that Dubai airports in terms of meteorology has got it down pat. So they called us and brought the whole event indoors. And in 3 days, we went from, and mind you, that was completely all set up outdoors.
Yeah.
We brought the whole event indoors, and that we had over 3,000 people in. So there was X amount of people on the floor, use of the suites in terms of that, entertainment, production, catering. It was by far, and obviously we've delivered whatever it is, 400 plus events since that day. But that still to that moment is just a prime example of everyone collating together and with a common goal to make that happen. And the good thing is, at 11 o'clock that night, as towards the end of that event, it absolutely poured down.
Okay.
So the decision to move it was the correct one.
No, that's amazing. And so kind of looking ahead with Coca-Cola Arena constantly innovating and expanding its capability, what's next in terms of offerings at the venue? What are you most excited about?
I think it's always great to talk about what's next. And undoubtedly with the multiple genres that we have, the excitement sits on what's next. What is that major show that's coming through? For us, it's all about getting the basics right, number one. And so what's next in terms of is growing our team, investing in technology and using data to get that basics right. If we can have one less complaint per show about an experience, that is a win for us. That is that goal. But to answer your question, what's next? How do we make that space more viable? We've gone from what was traditionally known as you can only do shows 4 or 5 months a year, now to realistically doing shows 12 months of the year. Ramadan, you've lived here your whole entire life.
Yeah.
We've got 4 sporting events during the holy month of Ramadan.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not going to change moving forward, especially as the day keeps moving forward. We now have a sort of a marquee for a traditional Ramadan experience in our car park. So it's very much saying what's inside our building will grow and develop. Our customers, and that's artists, consumers, suppliers, how do we consistently grow and develop to make their life easier, make it more seamless? But then looking at our plot of land and saying, okay, how can we serve that community better? What can we do? How can we take events outdoors? How can we introduce more sporting events? Can we build a massive half pipe in the front of our building with a backdrop of Burj Khalifa and do an X Games?
That would be very cool.
That's all I can say at the moment.
Yeah. That would be really, really cool. And so kind of from a broader perspective, where do you see the future of live events and sports in the Middle East? I think, we've been seeing so much investment in the broader region. And so how do you think that'll pan out across the next, call it 5 to 10 years?
Diversification. We're extremely fortunate in our city to be able to play multiple genres. And, ASM Global has, within that 400 plus venues, we have 111 arenas. And we're very fortunate that, especially with Australasia and Europe, we have access to the relevant teams from these and a full visibility of their calendar. They are undertaking 90% of their content in the English language. We're the only ones that are diversifying that across multiple languages. Some of our venues, of course, in Asia are, in Cantonese or Vietnamese or whatever, or Korean in that perspective. But the majority of that's where that business sits. As a city, we see multi-split of content coming through in different nationalities. And yes, the objective is always to have that AAA. But did you know we're doing Iranian content? We're now doing Greek. We're doing Filipino. We're doing Cantonese. We're doing Taiwanese. We're doing, Arabic, different dialects of Arabic, Russian speaking. We've had Lithuanian content in the building before. Appreciate it was a small corporate event, but it's still showcasing that different talent that's coming through and really understanding how that city is growing, what are the commercial opportunities, and sharing what data that we have as well out to stakeholders, to the tourism board, to the sports council, to the hoteliers associations, to our retail developments such as City Walk and so forth.
Very, very interesting. So I think with one final question, given your tennis background, I'd love to know Nadal or Federer.
Stefan Edberg. So I grew up on Stefan Edberg. Different styles of game. The overall sportsman has to be Roger, but take nothing away from Rafa.
Amazing. Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. I think we learned a lot of really, really interesting things and appreciate the time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome.